Are you an inexperienced or young project manager looking to earn the respect of your peers in the workplace? If so, this week's episode of Better Projects Today is for you. Better Projects Today is the bite-sized project management podcast helping you to bridge theory and practice in your own work to create better teams, better results, and better projects today. I'm Tyler Norman, and I bring 15 years of experience as a global program leader and serial mentor to project professionals. I'm excited about this week's episode. This is a topic I get asked about a lot, and it comes in many different forms. I'm new to project management, and I can tell I'm not being taken seriously. I'm the youngest person in the room, and nobody will listen to me. Many different versions of that. At the end of the day, being a project manager and gathering respect is hard. When you walk into a room where everybody already knows each other, they know the unspoken rules, the stakeholders are experienced, they know all the different groups represented, it can be very tough to walk in and then lead a meeting. But your influence doesn't have to correlate with your age or years of experience. It can come from deliberate behaviors that signal competence, confidence, and credibility to people that you may be meeting for the first time. In this episode, we'll cover 6 strategies that I've used and also coached many early career PMs to use to immediately gain respect and build authority over time in your organization. First tip is learn to speak the language of project management. This is one of the quickest ways that people in a room can pick up on whether you've been doing it for a while or whether this may be even your first project. The key here is figure out the terminology to quickly convey these concepts in a way that facilitates good discussion. This is one of the biggest reasons I recommend that folks go out for certification in project management, like the CAPM or the PMP from PMI. It's not about the letters after your name. It's not that people are going to see that and instantly think that you're an absolute authority. Some might, but many won't. The key is when you know how to speak the language of project management, it shows that you can quickly work through decisions. An example I'll give is early in my career, and I'll never forget this, I had an executive that wasn't the sponsor, asked for something to be done as part of a project. And I said, I don't know that that is really appropriate for this project. And the executive jumped all over that and said, based on your experience, based on what knowledge, who do you think you are recommending that basically? Now, if faced with that same question, I would say, I don't know that that aligns with our scope. It could be scope creep. Why don't I log that as a change and we'll put it in front of our sponsors so they can make the decision? And what often happens if you do that, people say, it's probably not in scope. Let's move on. Knowing how to speak the language of project management will not only help you defend the project scope, but it will help you quickly convey information to people in a way that they can use it and run with it. Second tip, master the fundamentals of project management and then show receipts in a good way. And receipts is important. I'm not saying show your homework. No one needs to know how you built out a schedule or an Excel file, but show them receipts that demonstrate your control of scope, schedule, budget, risk, and the skepticism will start to fall away quickly. Competence is the biggest thing you can do that will overcome people's beliefs that you're not experienced, too young, so on and so forth. Some of the ways you can do this are show your templates and tools openly. You don't have to pull it up and talk through it every single time people ask how you came to a decision. But if you are completely transparent and show that visual proof that your process is disciplined and you're not making it up as you go, people will start to see that you know what you're talking about. One way I do this is anytime we're walking through a decision that even if I'm not going to bring it up, there's a link out that anyone in the discussion can go look at that tool, vet it. I openly ask for people to tell me where it's wrong. Another tip here is publish crisp status reports, highlight key metrics, blockers, and next steps, and try to avoid writing multi-paragraph, full of fluff updates. And then anticipate questions. Try to walk into every meeting prepared for what are the things that the people in this meeting are going to want to know about. And even if it's not appropriate to share it in advance, be ready for some of those questions. A key here is, and we'll talk about mentors in a bit, but one of the best things you can do as a newer PM is ask for help from a more experienced person in your org or in your network to show them what you're going to be talking about in a meeting later in the day next week and say, What questions am I going to get? What do I need to be ready for? Tip number 3, anchor every conversation in business value. One thing that senior leaders get frustrated with, or that they see young or inexperienced PMs do, and it makes it feel like they're wasting their time, is the conversations are focused on the how and the what. We're doing this. I'm going through these steps. The language of senior leaders is all about business value. How is what you're doing advancing strategy, cutting costs, driving more revenue? Talk in those terms, and you'll demonstrate that you understand that the projects exist to serve a larger organizational goal, not the other way around. You're not doing the project just to do the project. A few ways to do this are translate deliverables into outcomes. Instead of saying, I've got this great new software that's almost done, frame it as, we expect that we're going to get a boost in sales productivity once this rolls in within 6 months. Quote some numbers, know the numbers or know how to get to them quickly. I work with some folks in finance groups that they're going to ask every time, what's the impact on ROI? This change, what's the impact on the project's ROI? You'll get quizzes like payback period. What kind of cost avoidance does this do? You're not going to be able to remember this stuff off the top of your head, but know where to find it quickly. And when you go into a meeting, and like I mentioned a moment ago, you're predicting the questions, maybe have that file ready to go on the side for when the questions come. Another piece here is connect the dots for each stakeholder. Tailor that value story so that finance hears dollars, marketing hears market reach, operations hears efficiency and reduction in manual processes. Make sure that you're talking to each stakeholder in terms of business value, but also the specifics of business value they care about. Tip number 5, build and share a coalition of mentors. A visible network of senior allies in your org will not only provide you with a ton of value, but it will also signal to people across the org who have been there, done that they should trust you too. Some ways to do this are formalize informal help. So ask experienced PMs, don't just hit them with a question and be done, come back to them as sounding board and ask for specifics. A key here is don't just ask for help without anything specific or telling them why. Go to the person at your org that is really good with business cases and say, I've heard you're great with business cases. I could use a little bit of help. Can I grab you for a few minutes to talk through it? Another key is give public credit. When you ask for help from that person, be sure to share, I aligned with this person who has a lot of experience, based on that, here's the plan I have coming forward. And it will, not only will it give your plan a little bit of borrowed credibility, but it will also demonstrate that you're willing to go ask for help. And then reciprocate value. When it comes to asking for help from others, see what you can give back. Offer to help with some meeting minutes or research emerging tools, or just see if there's anything you can do to give back a little bit of value to make sure that mentorship is a two-way street and you find it easier to get more of that mentorship in the future. Next tip, speak the language of each audience. We touched on this earlier, but this is so critical, not just when describing value, but also any topic in project management. So, technical leads, finance controllers, executives, ops leaders, they all look at information in a very different way, and adapting your style for whatever your audience is at that specific point will reduce friction and position you as someone who's empathetic and understands how to get things done. So a few examples are technical teams use precise requirements. Technical teams hate getting drug around or things get missed and they have to circle back. So use precise requirements, tell them what you need, tell them who the contacts are, use backlogs, demo, stay away from high level jargon or trying to look like you're coming off smart. I have found when I deal with technical teams, everyone knows that I'm probably the least knowledgeable on their specific topic in the room. So cut to the chase. Finance, they want to understand the financials, obviously, but look at things in terms of forecasts, earned value. One thing that finance teams like to hear is variances and sensitivity. They want to know that, sure, you're forecasting $500,000 next year, but what's the variability around that? Is it plus or minus 20,000 and they can plan for that? Or is it plus or minus 200,000, potentially a very big 40% up down variance? With executives, lead with the headline, what's the impact, what's the risk, what's the decision, and then offer additional depth. A key with executives, be brief, be brilliant, be gone. Tell them what they need to know, be ready to offer more if that's what they'd like, but don't immediately dive into the detail. Another key with executives that I got wrong a lot early on is if you're looking to make a decision and you want their input, often executives will do better with it if you can offer a recommendation, explain why you have that recommendation, offer a couple alternatives, and then pose it as, are you good with the recommendation or would you like an alternative? Executives often don't like if you give 3 options and say, completely open, which would you like? If you can learn how to code switch between those different dialects, it'll show emotional intelligence and you'll just be more effective. Last tip, and this is far and away the most important of all of them, especially when you're a young or inexperienced project manager. Project a calm sense of urgency. So teams mirror your energy. And when they see you panic, especially if you're a new or inexperienced project manager, when you get a tough question or when things are going off the rails a little bit and you start panicking and you start talking fast and you start getting argumentative, one of 2 things is going to happen. First, your team is going to give that back and good dialogue is going to break down because everybody starts to panic and talk fast and argue. The second is the people who are able to avoid that are just going to lose respect for you. They're going to see you as panicky, flighty. They're not going to trust you moving forward for when things hit the fan. The key here, the sweet spot is you don't want to come off as lackadaisical. If you just don't care, that's bad too. But you want to communicate control, momentum, urgency without losing your cool. And this is hard. This is not something that I did well early on. This is not something that many people do well early on. But there are a few tips to make this happen. So the first is have tempo rituals. Maybe this is daily stand-ups, weekly risk reviews, monthly steering committee for big decisions. When you have those structures in place, it lets you know that you don't need to panic right this moment. You've got structure in place, and it kind of gives your work a tempo. Another key is escalate issues quickly. As soon as an issue pops up, deal with it, but go about it in a way that's solution oriented. One of the biggest mistakes I see with new PMs is they freak out and flip the table and we have a huge problem, but they don't approach it from a perspective of where do we go from here. So the way to do this is we've got a big problem. We've got a budget overrun. What are our potential options? Okay, we can trim scope. We can ask for more money. We can, stretch out our timeline so that we're not asking for much in this period. All of your options may sting a little bit, but the key is don't just throw your hands up and say, we have a problem. Approach it as, we've got a problem. Let's work through it. Let's work through it together. Another key, celebrate incremental wins. Little recognitions will keep morale up without slowing velocity down. And that's something that's important. The last, and this is something that some of my direct teammates in my current role have learned this and laugh a little bit when it happens. With your team mirroring your energy, use that to modulate up and down the intensity a little bit. And let me give some examples to make that make sense. When things get really heated and I want to slow it down a little bit because good dialogue is breaking down, I will start talking a little bit slow and pausing a little bit more and explaining my points a little bit more slowly. And what that does is the room slows down a little bit, everybody breathes, people respond a little bit slowly, and it can bring the energy down a little bit. To the flip side, I work in a heavily remote environment, and sometimes I can tell that people aren't paying attention or people aren't really bought in and people aren't that excited about it. And that's the point where I'll bring the volume up a little bit and I'll ask pointed questions and where do we go, guys? What's going on? Help me out here. And you can bring the pace up a little bit in a way that's smiling and, not confrontational, but you can bring the energy up a little bit too if you see that the room needs that. That's hard to do. You have to know your audience a little bit to do that well, but that is such an important skill for project managers and really any leaders to learn to do. That brings us to the end of the episode. Some key takeaways are respect doesn't come with a job title or certs or even years of experience. It's earned through consistent actions that make the people you're dealing with and working with lives easier. And if you do all of that, projects will be more successful. If you follow these tips, your age, your limited resume won't just become irrelevant. They'll become afterthoughts overshadowed by the results you deliver. That brings us to the end of the episode. If you have a topic or question you'd like to see addressed in a future episode of Better Projects Today, let me know in the comments below.